I'm Ashton Addison from Blockwest Capital for Investment Pitch Media and the Crypto Coin Show. And today on Blockchain Interviews with Michael Kong, CEO of Fantom. Michael, welcome to the show and thank you for taking the time to come on.
Yeah, thanks, Ashton. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Likewise, I'm really excited to dive into Fantom. Your protocol is working on so many different things. There's so many things we could be talking about. But let's start out for the newer crypto users and people who don't know about the intricacies of Fantom, of just, what is Fantom all about? What is your team working on? And then we'll dive into those details.
Yeah, sure. So Fantom is essentially what is like the Fantom Foundation, and there's a Fantom ecosystem. So just like how there's like the Ethereum ecosystem and the Ethereum Foundation. So, with regards to the Ethereum ecosystem, the base technology is it's a layer one platform. It processes transactions asynchronously, meaning that you can process multiple transactions simultaneously, in contrast to say Bitcoin or Ethereum. So with Bitcoin and Ethereum, you process like block by block, so each block gets mined. With Fantom, that's entirely not the case. What happens is transactions get packed into blocks, and then those blocks are passed around the validating nodes in the network, and you need 2/3 of the consensus to confirm that block. But multiple blocks get passed around simultaneously to the validators to get that 2/3 consensus. And once you have 2/3 consensus, or just over 2/3 consensus of the network, that's when a block is definitely finalized. So it's added to the chain and it's final. So you only need one block confirmation. You don't need 5 or 6. There's no longest chain rule. So you have fast finality. Usually blocks are being processed currently on the network about every 0.8 to 0.9 seconds. And because you're processing blocks simultaneously, your network throughput goes up, which means that you can handle more transactions per second. And it also means that your transaction fees go down accordingly. So for example, you can perform complicated smart contracts on Ethereum that can cost you, $50 to $100, and you're paying, maybe like 50 cents a dollar on Fantom in comparison. So, I think we have a good baseline of technology. There's still a lot of improvements to be made that, perhaps I can go into on the call. But that's the base technology, and that's connected to the Ethereum virtual machine, which means that the way that you write, compile, and deploy smart contracts on Ethereum works pretty much the same way as on Fantom. And on top of that, you've got, your usual API suite, what we call like RESTful-based APIs. So, being able to read and write data on chain. So, for example, like Web3.js, you have on Ethereum, you also have on Fantom. So it's a very familiar smart contract development environment. It's just that the consensus is very different, which means that, you can submit transactions faster and cheaper than, say, alternatives that are out there.
Amazing. Great intro, Michael. Thank you for that explanation on a little bit of the intricacies of the technology. And from studying blockchain at a high level, I first saw this blockchain trilemma. And I'm not sure if it's really the case in all blockchains, but sometimes there is a trade-off between the scalability and the decentralization and the security as well. And it sounds like you've solved that scalability issue, when compared to Ethereum and Bitcoin trying to fit all the transactions into one block and lower the amount of confirmations. Did you see a trade-off between the security and the decentralization to get this, or maybe you can walk me through that?
We haven't really solved the blockchain trilemma, so to speak. What we've done is kind of optimize it. So the blockchain trilemma, for people that aren't there, is basically this theory that of 3 categories of features that you want in a chain that are beneficial: decentralization, security, and performance. That you can only really pick between the 3 of them, right? Mm-hmm. And so you can only pick 2 of the 3 of them, right? And you can only optimize for 2 of them, and you kind of have to let one not really be that optimized. What happens with the Fantom technology is that we've basically reduced the trade-off. So for example, you can still get a lot of decentralization by having a lot of validator nodes. From our analysis, I think we can have 3 or 4 times the amount of validator nodes that we have in the network. Right now we have 66 processing transactions. So you can get a few hundred validators, and the performance won't degrade that much. It will still be a lot more performant than say Bitcoin and Ethereum, but it would be a lot more decentralized. And so, but if you were to continuously add nodes to the network and get say 1,000, you probably would see significant decrease in performance. So I guess my point being here is that, generally in programming, when you process things asynchronously, in other words, when you process transactions simultaneously rather than one at a time, just think about it logically, you would be able to process more transactions, right, without having to give up other things. So, it's not really a solution to blockchain trilemma. There are other solutions that we're actively looking into. I know other projects that are actively looking into as well, such as, for example, sharding, such as, for example, replacing the Ethereum smart contract execution stack with our own smart contract execution stack that kind of solves a lot of the scalability problems associated with Ethereum smart contract technology, and a whole bunch of other ideas. So I just want to be clear that what we have right now at Fantom, in terms of the baseline technology, is very solid. It works. It basically never goes offline. It is quite scalable. So it's a great baseline to work off of, but it's not the ultimate solution to the blockchain trilemma. It's not the ultimate solution to infinite scalability. With Fantom's current technology or any other blockchain technology out there, you're not going to be able to host 1 billion users, right? You're not going to be able to host the same number of users that exist on the internet, which is where we want to be in the end, and I think we'll get there in the end. But there's a lot of technology improvements that need to be made along the way, and I do think that there are coming, though, including on Fantom.
Amazing, humble and informative. Thank you, Michael. And earlier on, you also mentioned about the EVM compatibility. I feel like that's really important for growing the development ecosystem on Fantom so that more dApps that are already built in blockchain can move to Fantom. And I'm also curious about the developer ecosystem and just making it easier for people to build dApps and DeFi and smart contracts on Fantom.
Yeah, so we do have a very strong development environment. Just to give you some numbers out there. On average, we process anywhere from 700,000 to over 1 million transactions on a daily basis. So this is very competitive towards Ethereum and other chains that are out there. We processed over 220, or maybe it's now even more than 230 million transactions since the network first went live, which was on the 27th of December 2019. We also have more than 2 million unique wallet addresses, and we have a lot of smart contracts deployed on chain. I think the total number is in the thousands, and of those thousands, we probably have a few hundred applications that are kind of widely used to varying degrees. So as I mentioned before at the beginning of the conversation, the way that you kind of like and compile and deploy smart contracts on Ethereum works the same way as on Fantom. That means that if you're a smart contract developer who's familiar with, say, Solidity, who's familiar with the Ethereum development environment, with the Ethereum tooling, deploying on Fantom doesn't require you to learn new things. I mean, all that it requires you to learn is how to connect to the network and how to basically point your application to the Fantom network as opposed to the Ethereum network. And the documentation that's been laid up, for more than a year, more than 2 years now. So it's very, very straightforward stuff if you're already familiar with developing on Ethereum. And I think that strategy has kind of got us, has been a big reason why we have a lot of traction that we do right now, because we've seen a lot of projects that have forked from Ethereum, deployed on Fantom. We see the usual DEXs, decentralized swaps, lending and borrowing protocols, synthetic tokens like you see on Ethereum, but deployed on Fantom because they're taking advantage of basically a different, faster consensus engine. When we first launched the chain, which was the end of 2019, we sort of had a decision to make. Did we want to integrate directly with the EVM, or did we want to be working on our own middleware and kind of push the mainnet launch a bit later? And we quickly came to the conclusion we wanted to integrate with the EVM, because even though there are a lot of inefficiencies with the EVM, which we're working a lot on, including at the University of Sydney, where we did a lot of research in the EVM, long before Fantom back in 2016. The EVM is something that does work, despite its performance issues. It does work. It does process smart contracts. It's proven to work on Ethereum as well as on Fantom, and also it was just something that kind of works out of the box that we could integrate quickly on chain and basically get the market quickly. And it's also something that people were very familiar with in terms of development. So it was very much for commercial reasons that we decided to integrate with the EVM, even though for example, the Solidity programming languages, for any programmers that are out there, they would know it's a bad language. It's not a good language for multiple reasons, multiple technical reasons. But we kind of made a commercial decision to go that route, and I think it was the right route, because otherwise, we still would be developing, and we wouldn't really have as many users as we do right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great point, Michael. And I think that was totally the right decision. But I've also seen with the Fantom Foundation creating grants and incentives and opportunities for more projects to start building on Fantom. And I'm also curious, how is that grants program going? And also, are you like incubating projects yourself on Fantom?
Yeah, so that grants program is actually completely overhauled a previous grants program that we announced in September 2021. And the reason why that we had to completely overhaul the grants program is that when we first launched the grants program a few months ago, about, what is it now, like 6 or 7 months ago, our vision was kind of like, well, we want a grants program out there that's based on objective metrics, where it's not going to be seen as like bias from the foundation as to like who the grants go to or anything like that, and making it very easy to like distribute the grants, right? And that's why we had metrics, most notably like the total value locked metric, right? The problem with that sort of metric though is that, as was proven in several articles that came out actually a couple of weeks ago, the system was like kind of flawed, because people were able to like game the system, not really run like, I guess you can call like legitimate applications, just like hoarding TVL and basically collecting the rewards, which, for some projects totaled, the current market price of Fantom, like over like $1 million every single month, right? And so some projects were taking that money and basically just like selling it, and and that wasn't the intention. The intention of the rewards was to help grow the individual project by giving it like back to the users, right? And that wasn't like really happening. And so we had like and we also had these kind of like bad projects basically like game the system, as I mentioned. And so we had to completely overhaul the project, because it was just basically like a waste of money, and a lot of money was wasted, and largely the incentive program was not very successful, I have to admit. But this new incentive program, I think, will be more successful, because it's taking away the subjectivity from the foundation to a certain extent. It's using the Gitcoin grants. It's letting people vote on via these Gitcoin grants, where like Fantom matches like the contributions, and therefore we have a lot more community input as to like which projects want to get funding. In addition to that, naturally with like naturally with an incentive program like the way we structured before, where it's based on these metrics, and the higher the metrics, the more rewards you get. That of course creates a bias towards incumbency. In other words, like the projects that are already big on Fantom will keep staying big on Fantom, even though there may be other projects out there that might be wanting to try and compete against them. They'll be at a big disadvantage, because in order for them to get like a higher TVL, they have to compete against projects that already have that high TVL, but the projects that have the high TVL are getting enormous funding from the foundation to the tune of like more than $1 million, sometimes more than that, right? And so, when we take away, those sorts of metrics and we put in the Gitcoin grant, it means that a lot more people can apply for it, and a lot more people across different projects. So another issue was that, for example, like, if you had a project in particular, like on the NFT space, what sort of metrics you use to kind of analyze to see, whether you get grants or not, or how much of the grants you get in the end, right? It's very, very hard to measure this data, and the data is kind of like a bit fuzzy, right? Whereas with Bitcoin, you don't have to look at that sort of data necessarily. You just leave it to the community to kind of decide, is this project legit based on maybe some more subjective factors about the team, about the background, about the application, the UI, the user experience of the application, as to whether it should get funding or not for the Fantom ecosystem. So a number of reasons why we have to completely overhaul it. I know that there are some existing projects that were receiving a lot of grants that, obviously no longer receiving, that were very upset with us. I've even heard some strong language about like betrayal and that sort of thing. I completely disagree with that, because these projects were getting, free money from the foundation, where the foundation did not require them to perform any services for the foundation or anyone in particular. We didn't ask them to do anything in return. We didn't ask them, we didn't ask them for anything in particular. All we said was, based on the incentive program, here's like $1 million every single month, right? And you know, for projects to say, oh, this is betrayal, we're going back on our work, you know, I completely disagree with that. You know, because if an organization is giving you free money and, you know, the free money stops, well, you know, I think you should appreciate that, you know, they've been giving you free money this entire time, asking for nothing in return. And so, you know, it's a bit ironic. It's kind of like, you know, had we not distributed the incentives at all, everybody would be a lot more happier, it seems like, right? But the moment you start distributing incentives and people think that they're kind of like entitled to it, and then you remove that and people get really upset because you've turned off the tap, you know, I guess it's just like kind of like human psychology, right? But I think this was absolutely the right decision. It's a right decision in the long run for Fantom. It extends the runway tremendously, and it solves a lot of those problems where, you know, a lot of money was just being, you know, taken away by essentially bad projects, right? It just gaming the system. So, you know, I think overall this is very, very positive for the Fantom ecosystem, and I think we've learned a lot of our lessons from the mistakes that we made.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you for that story, Michael. And yeah, I'm glad that you guys revamped it and it looks like it is better than ever. And with that said, from the previous program and this program, as you mentioned, there's a lot of DeFi based applications that are moving on to Fantom, more TVL, you know, more lending and borrowing. I'd like to know a little bit more about, you know, the Fantom ecosystem directly tied to, you know, the base protocol and the Fantom network token. I recently saw that there was a liquid staking program. Maybe you can talk about, you know, the DeFi and the staking of Fantom and how that's working on the protocol.
Yeah, sure. So liquid staking is definitely like a very great idea. It's an idea that, you know, we've had at the foundation for a while now, and I know other chains, for example, such as Ethereum, excuse me, most notably with Lido, you know, has embraced liquid staking. And liquid staking is all based on the concept of, you know, without liquid staking, say you have like Fantom, right? You basically have two choices in terms of like, well, you have more than two choices, but like, let's say you're deciding between, you know, I have Fantom, I want to use it, right? You kind of have two choices in terms of like, how do I get returns, right? I can stake it and get returns, which is like block rewards plus transaction fees. But then the token's locked up, so I can't use that for other things, right? I can't use that to pay for transaction fees and network. I can still use that for governance, but I can't use that to participate in NFTs. I can't use that, you know, as medium of exchange. I can't use that in terms of like participating in DeFi protocols, right? You know, for example, like collateralizing it, you know, to generate a stablecoin and do all sorts of lending and borrowing with it. With liquid staking, you can basically, it allows you to do two things, because what happens is you stake your FTM, and then there's another token contract that can kind of see how much FTM you staked in there and issue like a derivative FTM, so to speak, where it's a one-to-one token representation. So in order for you to unstake your token, you basically have to burn your derivative token to be able to unstake your FTM from like a validator, right? But while it's staked, you have this derivative token, and with this derivative token, you basically have utility for it, right? So for example, you could participate in, you know, as a medium of exchange if people accept it, you could participate in DeFi, and like all the things that you could participate as if you had the original FTM, if, you know, the other party or the smart contract is willing to accept it, right? So in other words, like, you know, you can keep using your FTM while it's being locked up, so you earn the staking rewards, and you can earn like the DeFi rewards and all the other utility that goes to it. So, you know, originally, like the foundation had its own like liquid staking mechanism, which was not that successful because we didn't have auctions and liquidations for FUSD, which we now have an implementation of working on the test net, so we have to test that out. But beforehand, we had like FTM that you could colorize to SFTM, and then you could stake FTM to generate SFTM, 1-to-1 ratio. And with SFTM, you would colorize at about a 300% ratio to generate FUSD, which is going to be this native stablecoin on the Fantom network. But fortunately, there are people in the community that are now running stablecoin, their own native stablecoins on Fantom, right? And so you have other providers in there, such as Anchor, such as Beefy, such as data networks that are coming, just to name three, where they're devising different liquid staking solutions. And some of them, such as Anchor and Beefy, have already been implemented and are getting like adoption over time. And so I think this is a net positive for the Fantom ecosystem, you know, for the reasons I mentioned before. That being said, you know, people have asked, you know, I think very important questions about, you know, the degree of centralization as a result of liquid staking, and your voting power when participating in liquid staking. And I think those are all like valid concerns. And kind of my response to that is, I think it's really up to the individuals to decide, which staking provider they want out there. And ultimately, it's kind of like a free market, right? So if somebody doesn't like a particular liquid staking provider, they can go with other alternatives that are out there. They can make their own alternatives, or they can decide not to participate in liquid staking in and of itself. So that's kind of like liquid staking that's happening on Fantom. So there is like adoption starting to emerge, and a lot of it has been community driven, which is great to see.
That is great to see. And thank you also for explaining about the stablecoin ecosystem. I've been curious about that, as we've been hearing other stablecoins being released on Cardano, and the Terra is in the news all the time about their stablecoin, and just the FUD of Tether and the USDC, and people are always looking for different alternatives. So it's great that people can also look through stablecoins on the Fantom ecosystem. Now, Michael, we don't have a lot of time left, but I would love for you to explain, if there are new projects that are looking to move to Fantom, or if there are just individuals and crypto traders and investors that are looking to learn more about the ecosystem as well. What is the best way for those parties to learn more and to get involved into Fantom?
Yeah, sure. So like the website that, or the link that has the most information is our website, which is fantom.foundation. So on there, you can see more of a description about Fantom, the Fantom ecosystem. You can see a whole list of like pretty popular applications across different categories, such as DEXs, such as bridges, NFTs, gaming, etc. on the Fantom main page. You can also see more technical detail with like papers that we've written and published online, as well as like links to like GitHub, our socials, Telegram, Discord, Twitter, where like we do like our announcements across social media, and just more about the team there as well. So really like Fantom.foundation is your go-to source. But also Twitter, which is @FantomFDN. So @FantomFDN is where we also share the latest updates as soon as they basically come out publicly. So that's where people can kind of go out to find more. And docs.fantom.foundation, there's a series of docs on Gitbook that basically outlines how you can connect to the Fantom network. So it has all the information about connecting to the testnet, connecting to the mainnet, running your read-only node, running a validated node, deploying contracts to Fantom sample contracts, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of documentation out there that if you're an Ethereum developer, should be pretty straightforward to follow. It's not really that different from deploying on Ethereum.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. Thank you so much, Michael, for coming on to talk about Fantom. I will leave the Fantom Foundation and the social links and the docs all in the description box below. All the best with everything moving forward. I know there's a lot to work on. I'm impressed with the rate that your team and the ecosystem that is growing. So all the best to you moving forward, and let's follow up in the near future.
Thanks, Ashton. Really appreciate the opportunity again.